Let us now continue on the essential requisites of a contract. Second to essential requisites after consent is the object of contracts. According to Article 1347, all things which are not outside the commerce of men, including future things, may be the object of contract. All rights which are not intransmissible may also be the object of contracts. No contract may be entered into upon future inheritance except in cases expressly authorized. All services which are not contrary to law, morals, good customs, public order, or public policy may likewise be the object of a contract. Okay, that is Article 1347. So with that article, sinasabi dito kung ano yung mga pwede at hindi pwedeng maging object ng contract. First, ano ba talagang concept ng isang kontrata? The object of the contract is its subject matter. In reality, the object of every contract is the obligation created. But since a contract cannot exist without an obligation, it may be said that the thing, service, or right, which is the object of the obligation, is also the object of the contract. Okay? So, sinasabi lang na yung object ng every contract, ito rin yung subject matter ng ating kontrata. Pwede siyang thing, pwede siyang service, pwede siyang right. Okay? Now, ano ba yung mga kinds of object ng isang kontrata? Object certain is the second essential element of a valid contract. Sinabi ko, the object may be things, rights, or services. So, ano ba ang requisite bago natin masabi ng isang thing as object of a contract or isang bagay ay maging object ng isang kontrata? Number 1, the thing must be within the commerce of men. That is, it can legally be the subject of commercial transaction. Dapat within the commerce of men. Hindi na pwede yung hindi na magagamit ng ibang tao. It can be a subject of a commercial transaction. Kaya lang isang magandang example dito kadalasan class is yung tinatawag nating junk shop. Yung iba kasi basura na. But junk shop can even convert it to a commercial transaction. So, ang thinking dito, class, is that can it be legally subject to a commercial transaction? If the answer is yes, then it is within the commerce of men. Okay? Number 2, it must not be impossible, legally or physically. Dapat posibleng maging object. Hindi pa pwedeng buwan, araw, at buwan, araw, at bituin. Diba? Kaya pag sinabi ni Sharon Cunetong, balutin mo ako sa hiwaga ng iyong pagmamahal. Ano bang kanta yun? Yung may bituin? Bituing walang ningning. Gawin mo akong bituing walang ningning. Okay? Then it must be, number 3, it must be in existence or capable of coming into existence. Okay? Dapat nag-e-exist. Hindi pa pwedeng non-existent or posibleng mag-exist. Number 4, it must be determinate without the need of a new contract between the parties. Okay? Dapat determinate. Hindi pa pwedeng hula-hula lang. Okay? At kung ito ay magbabago, syempre magbabago tayo ng contract. Then, pag magbabago tayo ng contract, ang tawag na rito ay novation. Pagpapalitan natin yung object ng ating contract. Now, ano naman ang mga requisites kung services naman ang object ng ating contract? As a service, the service must be within, again, the commerce of men. It must not be impossible physically or legally. It must be determinate or capable of being made. Okay? halos pareho lang yung 1 and 3. Or 1, 2, 3, halos magkakarugtong, syempre. Pag sinabi mo kasing services class, dapat yung object mo as a service, yun talaga naman pwede. Lang naman sabihin mo, fly me to the moon. Hindi naman pwede yun. Fly me to the moon, using your pakpak. Kung tao ka, wala naman may pakpak, di ba? Unless, ikaw ay manananggal. Pero kung manananggal, pwede pa bang umabot ng buwan? And that is services. Fly me to the moon and I will give you 500,000 para lang may sakay mo ko doon, papunta doon. So, it is considered physically impossible. It is outside the commerce of men dahil wala naman talagang manananggal unless mapapatunayan natin. And it is not determinate. Okay? Now, last, yung rights as object of a contract. As a general rule, all rights may be the object of a contract except, itong tatandaan nyo, when they are intransmissible by their nature or by stipulation or provision of law. Okay? So, hindi pwede. Pero pag sinabi nyo all rights, pwede yan maging object ng isang kontrata. Except, pag sinabi na hindi pwede, sabi ng batas, at pinag-usapan, at by their nature. Okay? Bigyan natin ng example. Sidewalks, public places, bridges, streets. These are common to everybody such as air, light, and sunlight or rain. So, hindi sila pwede. Okay? Hindi pa pwede. Impossible or physically or legally prohibited drugs, illicit objects to kill a person. And yung mga example, determinate things, all canvas of rice in a bodega, all eggs in a basket. My land with the smallest area, the land at the core, determinate siya class. Future things or rights, things may be manufactured, raised, or acquired by the perfection of the contract. Ito yung mga sinasabi natin na pwedeng i-manufacture, pwedeng palakihin, manok, gatas, itlog, diba? Kahit na future thing siya, alam natin na pwede. Okay? Ano yung mga intransmissible rights? Political rights such as, of course, katatapos lang ng eleksyon, right to vote. Family, marital, or parental rights, hindi rin pwede. Okay? Kasi ang pag-aalaga sa magulang, ang pag-aalaga ng sa anak, hindi naman niya naipapasa sa iba. Okay? So, yan ang mga tinatawag nating rights or intransmissible rights. Now, ano yung tinatawag naman natin na future inheritance? Pag sinabi nating future inheritance, ito yung any property or right not in existence or capable of determination at the time of the contract that a person may inherit in the future. Such person having only the unexpectancy of a purely hereditary right. Inheritance ceases to be future upon the death of the decedent or deceased. Ito yung mga mana. So, ang sinasabi lang natin, yung mga future, expect mo na sa'yo mapupunta. Of course, sa'yo lang mapupunta yan kung mamamatay. Pag namatay na, hindi na siya future inheritance kasi sa'yo na. Okay? Kaya hindi na siya tawag doon, future inheritance. Ano yung mga validity of contracts upon pure inheritance? Okay? As a general rule class, tatandaan nyo na ang future inheritance is void kung ito ay kontrata. Meron lang sinasabi ang batas na pwede. Okay? Pwede. Ito lang ang mga pwede. Ito yung donation by reason of marriage and ito yung mga in case of partition of property by act of inter vivos by a person. Ano ibig sabihin ng inter vivos? Lifetime. Lifetime ng isang tao. Okay? To take effect upon the death of his death. Pag namatay, okay, pwede. Kasi yung future inheritance or yung property na yon, sinasabi natin, pwede. Pinapasa niya yan. Ini-involve sa isang kontrata. However, inaalaw lang ng batas ito na mag-take place dun sa tinatawag na will, or pwede niya ipasa yung property niya pag siya ay namatay. Dun sa example dun sa una, yun yung mga by reason of marriage. Siyempre, meron tayong mga tawag dito yung future property ng ating mga mag-asawa. Siyempre, hindi naman alam kung makakabili sila ng bahay. Pero pag sila ay nakabili ng bahay, of course, these are future inheritance, meaning pag namatay yung asawa at nabili nila ng bahay, automatic na napupunta doon sa asawa yung kanilang property. Kaya future inheritance. What are the kinds of impossibility? Physical or legal. Pag sinabi nating physical, when the thing or service in the very nature of things cannot exist. Hindi talaga nag-exist. Diba? Meron ba namang, halimbawa, unggoy na kumakanta? Nakakatawa yun kasi pag tinawag ka ng nanay mo, unggoy, kumakanta ka. So, unggoy na kumakanta ka. So, wag na natin bigyan example na yon. Halimbawa, ano ba magandang halimbawa? Dinosaur na sumasayaw. Since wala ng dinosaur, imposible yon. So, hindi na nag-e-exist ang dinosaur natin. Okay? With particular reference to services, ito with particular services to services, pwede siyang absolute or relative. Pag sinabi mong absolute, the act cannot be done in any case so that nobody can perform. Kahit anong gawin natin, hindi uubra. Absolute, wala talaga. Okay? Gaya ng dinosaur na lilipad sa buwan. Ang buwan ay lalapit sa lupa. Ang araw ay mahahawakan. Diba? Kahit anong gawin natin, it is absolutely cannot be performed. Ano pa yung type of physical according to services? Relative. Okay? When you say relative, it arises from a special circumstances of the case. Okay? Ano yun? To paint a portrait by a blind person. Makakapagpinta ba ang blind person? Mahirap yun. But, surprisingly, meron akong mga nakikita sa TV na meron ng gumagawa. But yet, I have to see it pa. Mahirap yung basta-basta maniwala. Okay? Pero ito yung mga bagay na relative. It is possible, but we'll see. We'll see. Magbabayad ka sa isang patay na tao. Paano ka makakapagbayad sa isang patay na tao? That is one way. Hindi pwede i-claim ng patay na tao na siya ay nabayaran na. Okay? These are relative, special circumstances of the case. Now, number 2, legal. When the thing or service is contrary to law, morals, good customs, public order, or public policy, an act is contrary to law either because it is forbidden by penal law. Example, madali naman yan. Shell sabu. Diba? Shell shabu. Diba? So, of course, it is impossible na mangyari ito. Okay? That's it. These are the kinds of impossibility. What else? Quantity of object of contract need not be defined, need not be determined. The object of a contract must be determinate as to its kind or at least determinable without the necessity of a new or further agreement between the parties. Okay, ito yung mga example ko kaninang sinasabi natin. Dapat kahit paano, hindi naman sinasabing exact figure or exact amount. Ang sinasabi lang, determinable. Okay, like halimbawa, all rice in the bodega. Basta naituro mo yung bodega, ibig sabihin lahat ng nasa loob nun. Eggs in a basket, regardless kung anong bilang, pag nakita nyo yung basket na pinag-uusapan, ang binibenta yung loob ng basket. Di ba, minsan nga, halimbawa, mabiling ko na yung isang sako mo ng mais. Wala nang bilagan yan. Pwede na yon. Pwede na, basta alam natin na determinable yung quantity ng object. Okay? So that is object of contract. Now, cost of contracts. Ano ba yung cost of contracts? Meaning muna. Ano bang meaning ng cost of contract? It is the essential or more proximate purpose which the contracting parties have in view at the time of entering the contract. Okay? Ito yung proximate purpose. So according to Article 1350, in onerous contracts, the cost is understood to be for each contracting party the prestation or promise of a thing or service by the other. Okay? Siyempre, pag sinabi mong remunatory ones, the service or benefit naman which is remunerated. However, in contracts of pure beneficence, the more liberality of the benefactor. So tatlo kagad nang diniscuss dito sa Article 1350. Onerous contract, remunatory ones, and of course, the contracts of pure beneficence. I-discuss natin as we go along. As I have said, cost is the more proximate purpose which the contracting parties have in view at the time of entering into a contract. For you to clearly understand, we have to differentiate. Ano ba yung cost versus meron ba talaga silang differentiation? Magkaiba ba talaga sila? Actually, the answer to that question is relative. Depende yan sa tumitingin. It is how you see it. Kung kanino mang viewpoint, kung sino ang tumitingin. Diba? Because in a reciprocal contract, like purchase, like sale, gagaya ng sale or yung pagbili nga, ito ay tinatawag nating reciprocal or bilateral contract, or pwede rin itong tawagin na onerous contract. Bigyan ko kayo ng example. Kasi dito, makikita nyo, iba ang object, iba ang cost dun sa bawat contracting parties. Okay? Example, si seller nagtinda ng relo kay buyer ng 5,000. Kay seller, ang concern niya is, or ang subject matter niya or object niya is the watch. And of course, the cost is the price. With regard naman kay buyer, the subject matter or the object is the price and the cost is the watch. Kuha nyo, class? Ulitin natin ha, para mas maintindihan nyo. Si seller nagtitinda ng relo kay buyer for 5,000. Diba? Ulitin ko, si seller nagtitinda ng relo kay buyer ng 5,000. Si seller, ang kanyang concern, yung subject matter niya or yung object, yung relo. Ang cost niya yung price. Tama? Pero sa viewpoint naman ni buyer, ang kanyang subject matter or object is the presyo. At ang cost niya is the watch. Okay? However, make this distinction. The cost for S is the delivery of the price and for B, the delivery of the watch. But to both S and D, the subject matter of the transaction is the watch. Diba? So, kung ganun another titignan nyo. So, kung pareho siya, sabihin nyo, sa ibang scenario, ganito lang yan. Delivery ng isa, delivery ng price, yung isa, delivery ng watch. Delivery ng price, delivery ng watch. So, ano yung subject matter? Transaction. Ano yung buong scenario? Halos pareho din. Di ba? As comparing both object and cost. Okay? What are the classification of contracts according to cost? Ito yung sinasabi ko kanina. Onerous, remunatory, and gratuitous. Ito yung according to Article 1350. Pag sinabi niyong onerous class, one the cost of which for each contracting party is the prestation or promise of a thing or service by the other. In other words, in this contract, the parties are reciprocally obligated to each other. They are obligated to each other. Reciprocal. Yung bawat isa merong gagawin. Yun, merong gagawin. Merong kapalit pala. The word is kapalit. So, bawat isa. Onerous kasi class, may pabigat. Okay, mabigat. May burden. So, may burden sa bawat isa. Di-deliver yung relo. yung isa magbabayad. So that is onerous. When we speak of remunatory or remunerative, dito, ang pinag-uusapan dito ay service or benefit. May service or benefit. Isa, may kapalit. Ito, service or benefit ang pinag-uusapan. The purpose of the contract is to reward the service that had been previously rendered by the party remunerated. Example, si X rendered services to paint the house. So, sabi ni Y, agreed to pay 10,000 for the said services. Okay? Ang tawag doon, remunatory contract. Pag sinabi mo namang gratuitous class, the last one, is one, the cause of which is liberality of the benefactor or giver. Okay? Ibig sabihin lang nito, class, purely donation, one side lang. Okay? Tinatanggap lang ng isa, yun ang pinaka-effort niya. Tanggapin. Okay? Wala siyang ibang gagawin, walang kapalit, walang serbisyo kung hindi tumanggap lamang. Okay? So that is the last classification of contract according to cause. Motive. Bakit may importante itong motibo na to or motive? Motive is purely personal or private reason which a party has in entering into a contract. It is different from the cause of the contract. Okay? Motive, purely personal yan. So, paano mo sila differentiate? Kasi ang cause class is the immediate or direct reason, while motive is the remote or indirect reason. Ay, parang gusto ko ng relo. That's your motibo. That's your motive. Pero yung cause, bibili na ako ng relo. Okay? What else? Cause is always known to the other contracting party, while motive may be unknown. Oh, bakit ko ba binibili ang relo na yan? Wala lang, gusto ko lang. Or, meron siya sa aking tawag doon? I forgot the word. Sentimental value. Meron siyang sentiment. Pero kailangan pa bang malaman ng seller yung sentimental value ng relo na bibili mo? No need. So that is motive at iba yon sa cause of contract. Cause is an essential element of contract while motive is not. Well, given naman yon. Obvious naman yon. Number 4, the illegality of the cause affects the validity of a contract, while the illegality of the one's motive does not render the contract void. Diba? Kung gusto mo ng shabu, ang motibo mo lang naman, matikman. Kahit ba illegal pa yung motibo mo, hindi bawal yon kasi nasa utak mo lang naman yon. Pero pag ginawa mo na at bumili ka na ng shabu at nagtinda ka na ng shabu, illegal na yon. Okay? It invalidates the contract. Okay? What else? Ano ba yung requisites natin for cause? Okay? What are the requisites of cause? Number 1, it must exist at the time of the contract is entered into. It must exist at the time the contract is entered into. Number 2, it must be lawful. Given naman yun. It must be true and real. Hindi pa pwedeng hindi totoo. Because, anong effect? Kung ito ay absence of a cause, means that there is a total lack of any valid consideration for the contract. So, contracts without cause confer no rights and produce no legal effect or whatsoever. Without cause, there is no contract. Okay? The contract which is absolutely fictitious or simulated or yung gawa-gawa lang, it is inexistent or void. Okay? Absence yun. Paano naman yung failure? Absence of cause should be distinguished from inadequacy of cause, which is a general rule is not ground for relief, and from failure of cause, which does not render a contract void. Pag failure. Thus, the failure to pay the stipulated price after the execution of a contract of sale does not convert the contract one into one without cause or consideration. It is not being essential to the existence of cause that payment or full payment be made at the time of the contract. Okay, failure, hindi nagawa. Iba yun sa absence. Failure, hindi nagawang magbayad. Absence, walang usapan na magbayad. So, absence yun. So, void yun. Okay? But the contract of sale is void for being without cause. Yun sinasabi ko. Okay? So, hindi siya void. What do you call this? That is void. Okay? Pero kung merong purchase price, ang nawa, hindi nakapagbayad, that is failure. Ano naman yung illegality of cause? When we speak of illegality, it implies that there is a cause but unlawful or illegal. Okay? Contracts with unlawful cause are also what? Null and void. The promise based upon carnal connection is founded upon an unlawful cause. Therefore, it is void. Ano ibig sabihin ng carnal connection? Ibig sabihin, nagpangako magpakasal, samantalang meron ka na palang asawa, then that contract is void. Okay? Paano naman kung falsity ang cause? By falsity of cause, it is meant that the contract states a valid consideration but such statement is not true. A false cause may be erroneous or simulated. The first always renders a contract void. Tandaan nyo, pag erroneous, void. If the cause is false, the contract is rendered void because the same actually does not exist. The second does not always produce this effect because it may happen that the hidden but true cause is sufficient to support the contract. If the parties can show that there is another cause and that said cause is true and lawful, then the parties shall be bound by the true agreement. So, yun ang kaibahan ng erroneous at simulated. Pag erroneous, wala talaga. Walang cause. Parang same as saying na absence of a cause. Pero pag simulated lang at gawa-gawa lang, baka naman meron tinatagong cause that will be the true intent of both contracting parties. So, hindi naman siya in general void. Okay? So, cause presumed to exist and lawful, of course. When you enter into a contract, it is always presumed na ito ay lawful and nag-i-exist siya. Hindi kailangang ipakita, hindi kailangang i-show. The law assumes that it exists. Okay? So, ano naman yung tinatawag nating lesion dito sa kabila, meaning of lesion and effect. Lesion kasi is the damage caused by the fact that the price is unjust, inadequate. Ito yung mga kulang yung bayad, kulang yung napag-usapan natin, nalugi. Yan yung tinatawag nating lesion. It is the injury suffered in consequence of inequality of situation by one party who does not receive the full equivalent for what he gives in a commutative contract. Like sale, usually. Okay? Kulang. Okay? Ano yung effect nun, class? General rule, lesion or inadequacy of cost does not itself invalidate. Hindi nag-invalidate ang contract. Okay? Kasi ito yung mga tinatawag na minsan may bargain eh. Bargain. Halimbawa, talagang ang presyo ng isang kotse 400,000 talagang nagmamadali, pupunta sa Amerika, kailangan ng pera, binibenta ng 300,000. So hindi naman necessarily invalidated na yung kontrata. Pero kung ito na naman yan, yung mga titignan yung mga sitwasyon class, kulang yung bayad, na-assume ng batas, nag-exist yun tsaka lawful. Pero class, kung kulang yung bayad, assumption is, pwede naman. Pwedeng ito ay valid. However, kung mapuprove nyo, ito yung exception natin, kung mapuprove na merong fraud, mistake, or undue influence, tinakot para ibenta na mas mura, then, the contract is void. Okay? Or, yung tinatawag din naman nating gross inadequacy, sobrang laki na. Okay? Hindi naman siya mag-a-affect sa price. Pero kung mapapakita natin na merong defect or yung vices ng consent ay present, then again, the contract will be considered void. Okay, thank you very much, class. And these are the essential requisites of a contract.